Is it even possible to pay these many people to come and attend the funeral?
Having below 50% voter turnout is pretty significant when you're considering voting for a country's leadership.
The Islamic Republic still enjoys a great level of support.
Iranians have complained their government is this lack of transparency.
The vetting process caused a lot of dissatisfaction.
Why is it that we care so much about Palestine? Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode on the TMJ podcast. Today we are talking about the fast approaching Iranian presidential elections with Setareh Sadeqi. She is a freelance journalist and translator based in Isfahan, Iran. She's also a lecturer in political sciences with a PhD in North American Studies from the University of Tehran. Setareh also hosts a podcast on YouTube called Twice Told Tales. Thank you again, Setareh, for being our guest today. I really appreciate your time, especially coming to speak with us at a really important time period in Iranian politics, having gone through a series of very important, significant issues in the past few months. And I really want to start the conversation with the death and the passing of the Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi, which was a shock to not only Iranians, but people all around the world. From what I know, the Iranian media has not officially said there have been any foreign influences, and they say it was an accident. So have there been any updates on that front?
Thanks for having me. Well, as you mentioned, the Iranian media has not pointed to any chances of sabotage or foreign involvement in what happened to the helicopter that was carrying our president and our foreign minister. The Iranian government strongly rejected the chances after doing their investigations. You hear from maybe on the social media among Iranians that there are guesses of some sort of foreign involvement, especially because, first of all, we have a history of being attacked, and there have been assassinations inside Iran carried out mostly by MEK, the terrorist organization, funded and sponsored and trained by Mossad and at some point by CIA as well. So it's like it suddenly reminds people of what has happened in the past, and they want to somehow relate the incident to the same factors that were involved in the assassination of other Iranian officials throughout all these decades after the revolution. And the other factor that made people make speculations is that the incident happened right after President Raisi met with Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan.
Right.
And Azerbaijan is known to be a staunch ally of Israel. Aliyev has opened relations with the Israeli regime. And these all happen after there were tensions between Iran and the Israeli regime, after the Iranian embassy was attacked in Damascus, and Iran responded to that. I mean, there are reasons why people made these speculations, but the investigations showed nothing or suggested nothing that would imply there was some sort of sabotage or foreign involvement.
Right. And with the passing, what legacy would you say that the late president left for the Iranian people and internationally?
Well, I think two most important events that happened during President Raisi's term in office were first Iran joining BRICS and the formation of BRICS or the expansion of BRICS, the welcoming of BRICS to welcoming other countries to become a part of it, which is very threatening to the U.S. and the current world order. It has implications for the Iranian economy. It could help ease sanctions, as Iran can use other currencies other than dollar, which we have been banned from using, and we have been isolated from the international banking system. And BRICS developing their own currency and a banking system would help Iran in many different ways, but also implications for the global world order and threatening dollar and threatening the current world order that has been harming or pressuring countries that do not subjugate to the U.S. and do not submit to the will of the hegemon. The
Right.
other thing was Iran's response to Israel's aggression against the country. For many years, Iranians have sought that the government would somehow respond to Israeli aggressions. It wasn't a direct military action against the Iranian
Right.
sovereignty, but it was in many ways forms of aggression by the Israeli regime. For example, the attacks on our military facilities through drones, or the cyber attack on our nuclear facility, the assassination of our nuclear scientists by Mossad. So there have been all sorts of aggression, but Iran never actually responded militarily, and this was the first time that Iran, I mean, the public opinion inside Iran and the global and international public opinion was so ready for a response by Iran because of what's going on in Gaza, the genocide that everyone is seeing. And as you know, that was praised by a lot of people and nations.
Absolutely. And I think in some ways the few legacies that you mentioned speak for themselves, because we did see on the media, of course, Western media did not really cover this as much, but there were millions of Iranians that showed up to his funeral, that participated. And one thing I also want to ask you about is, similar to other cases we have seen with Iran, where during major events throughout the year, you have a very significant population of Iranians pouring out into the streets. We always hear these kind of rhetorics of, oh, these people were paid off, or they were kind of, this is all government propaganda to show that the people are truly with the government. This also happened with the funeral of the president. What would you respond to that?
I mean, it's been so cliched and so many times repeated that there are many jokes about it inside the Iranian society.
Right.
There are these memes, or there are videos on social media how they make fun of this false allegations, and it just suggests that how people are very, or I mean, it's mostly Western media, but how they're either very ignorant about the Iranian society, or deliberately wants to play around the facts and not show the realities. And they cannot understand how the Islamic Republic still enjoys a great level of support by its people,
Right.
despite all the pressures and aggressions and all the difficulties and challenges that the country has gone through and is still going through. It's very difficult for them to understand how this happens. I'm from Isfahan and I live in Isfahan, but I happen to be in Tehran. I attended the funeral, and there were a lot of, I mean, the crowds were so large and it was so huge that we were fearing that stampede would happen. And I actually, because I was with an American friend who is an investigative journalist, and we would talk to people, and I would help with the translations. And we ask our people that, that Western media says that you have been paid to come here.
Right.
And you saw people like women, teenagers, women, young men, older people, older men and women, well, actually weeping the death of the president. And when I asked them, like, they with tears in their eyes, they would tell me, like, one lady said that she feels that she has lost her own dad, and that's how it was
Wow.
like tragic for her. The other one said, if people, or if in the West, or if Western media think that we have been paid, they should come here and see, is it even possible to pay these many people to come and attend the funeral? And no, we have come because we loved our president. And it's not just now that he has passed away, it's because we have appreciated what he has done. Especially, it was interesting for me, especially for the working class. They mentioned specifically that they came from the working class and they were very satisfied with the policies that he had.
Right. And I think maybe one of the reasons why this rhetoric comes out a lot is because the side that kind of tries to paint this in a way where all Iranians were actually rejoicing over this fact, they tend to be very loud about their sentiments. We had some videos coming out from Iran and others internationally, where you had a subsection of Iranians in the diaspora rejoicing over the death of the president. You had some people showing up in front of actual memorial events for him, kind of protesting. So you also had a very small subsegment of people showing happiness about this. Where do you think that might stem from? Is this about some sort of revenge?
Well, I think it's very important to know that even in those videos that went viral, where a part of Iranian diaspora or Iranians inside Iran were filmed as like celebrating the death of the president, there were very, very few people. Like the
Right.
images that we have, for example, in front of Iranian embassy in London or a memorial for him somewhere in the US, there are just a handful of people, and they're not really many people. But the Western media definitely likes to portray them as the majority, as the ones that whose opinion counts. Some of these people who were shown as celebrating the death of the president were waving Israeli flags too. It's
Absolutely.
and it should tell you where it comes from, right? It's
Exactly.
and I personally don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people who didn't like him or didn't vote for him. I personally didn't vote for him, but I had a lot of respect for him. I really didn't see anyone celebrating his death. And I'm not saying that they don't exist. They do exist for sure. But I think it's the effect of propaganda, unfortunately, and it's affecting Iranians as well because of the propaganda that exists that wants to portray him as, a president who's responsible for the death of Iranian people. But when you ask them, like, what do you mean by the death of Iranian people, they don't really have an idea. And a lot of these things, a lot of these, allegations started by the MEK organization. And that's, I think, another very important point to keep in mind, that a lot of these fake news comes from organizations that once were listed as terrorist organizations because they have killed many Iranians, but also Iraqis. In the case of MEK has killed Americans as well. So
Absolutely.
they're a terrorist cult, and they live in their camps, and they are responsible for spreading all these like fake news and false information.
Right. And it is also interesting to know how US support kind of fluctuates with groups like these, where, for example, at first, even the US will designate the MEK as a terrorist organization, but when it starts to serve their purposes, they're taken off that list, and now suddenly they're no longer a terrorist organization. So that's also, in line with what you were saying, really important to note, because all of this has very real consequences for the people of a country that are receiving all of this propaganda. Iran is now also inching very close to the elections. As we know, this is coming about a year early, but because of the circumstances, it's been kind of pushed forward. Do you think that the recent, death or the passing of the president is going to encourage more people to vote? Usually and we're going to get to voter turnout as well, but you have some people also saying, everyone should refrain from voting, show your discontent with the government by not voting. Whereas some people are actually taking this as a sign to, go to the polls and actually voice their opinions and their demands from the government through voting itself. How do you think this might be impacting the way people show up to the polls this year?
Based on my personal observation, I think there are more people going to vote because they felt very strong about the passing away of their president. But also, it's actually like it's one of the presidential elections that is very difficult to predict. Like usually it would be between two main candidates that you would have guesses, but now it's you don't really know. So maybe yeah. So that excitement tells me that it's probably higher than the last time that we had a presidential election, which actually witnessed the lowest turnout since the Islamic Revolution.
Right. And what are some of the major demands this time around that Iranians have from their government? And what are they expecting to see from the candidates? What are they kind of looking for in terms of qualifications, demands, especially for economic relief, which is something that many Iranians are struggling with? What are kind of some of those major points that they're looking at right now?
I think the main one and the most important one is definitely the economy. We have been struggling, and for the past few years, it's been more difficult than ever. That, for example, I remember it's in my life as an adult, at least, because we had economic ease after the war. Like during the war, the 8-year imposed war on us, backed by the US and carried out by Saddam's regime. It was very difficult, and when we came out of that war, we went through a lot of financial and economic challenges, but we had periods of prosperity and the country starting to flourish. But for the past like maybe 4 or 5 years, it's been very difficult, and each year it has become more difficult. So that's number
Right.
one. And people want to see more employment. People want to see that the value of our currency increases, and we move towards a more stable economy, because right now there is not economic security. Prices can change overnight, and it's very, very
Yeah.
risky to invest on anything. That's what, like, number one thing that people are looking for. Another thing that I have seen people are trying to pay attention to is a foreign policy that relies more on domestic, the capabilities, rather than whether or not, for example, we can have a deal with the U.S. or improved relations with the U.S. Because in our experience, like, people had a lot of hope that the nuclear deal would bring about economic relief and, like, make things easier for them. But this did not happen, not because of the deal, but because the U.S.
Yeah.
unilaterally, like, withdrew from the deal, and this could happen at any time. So they have learned in many different ways that the U.S. cannot be trusted. The Europeans just follow the U.S. So if anything is going to happen that brings about some sort of economic ease, should happen from inside, and we should not be looking at the U.S. or Europe to bring about um, economic ease for us.
100%. And speaking about economic challenges, that's something that Iranians, especially in the recent years, have really been grappling with. And in terms of just looking at the reasons why voter turnout rates are affected by these, it also has a significant impact of how satisfied are people with the way that their government is handling their society and their economy. Just to pull up some numbers, and we're going to kind of shift into the conversation about voter turnout because I think that's also important given how the elections are coming up. For presidential elections, the most recent one in 2021, which is when President Raisi came into power, the voter turnout rate was 48.8%, which is below 50% of the country's population. And this is a huge drop from other years where, for example, in 2013 and 2017, I believe you had 73% voter turnout, and in 2009 it was around 85%. So these are very high numbers, and then suddenly we're dropping. We see similar trends with the parliamentary elections. I believe this year it was about 40% for the parliamentary elections, and I believe these numbers are from the Interior Ministry, so correct me if I'm wrong. But what would you say the reason is? Because these are, having below 50% voter turnout is pretty significant when you're considering voting for a country's leadership. What would you say kind of the reasons behind these statistics are?
Well, one thing, as we mentioned, is the situation with the economy, the financial challenges that people are going through, and because they have been promised that, for example, a nuclear deal would solve the problem, or we're going to just rely on domestic production, but they did not really see a tangible change in their lives. They're dissatisfied, and they want to show that to the government. But the other thing is also the vetting process, especially 3 years ago. The vetting process caused a lot of dissatisfaction, not only among people, but also among political elites and important figures. And they criticized the Guardian Council for disqualifying prominent figures that would have, like, they had a lot of friends within the society. They might have not won the election anyways, but they had a significant support within the public. This year also there was criticism for the vetting process, but it was more severe last year. The last elections that we
Right.
had. And that's one reason, because people kind of felt insulted. They felt that their choices have been, like, limited on purpose. The government failed to convince the public opinion why exactly this happened. So these two, I think, were the main factors for the very low turnout. In general, parliamentary elections are usually witness much, lower turnout in comparison with the presidential elections. But this year was like historic low turnout, and a part of it was because of the vetting process and also the economic challenges that people were facing, and they were not seeing anything different. And the candidates were not very different from the previous term, so they did not really hope that something would change. Whereas, for example, with the presidential election this year, we're seeing a more like diverse, arrangement of the candidates. So there's like more hope of change, and I think we will probably see. I wouldn't say like much higher turnout, but slightly higher turnout, voter turnout. But it also depends on how the presidential debates will go.
Right. And just to be clear, before we kind of move on to the next question, what you mean by the vetting process, I believe it's when the government is the one that decides whether certain candidates are eligible to make it to the final rounds. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly like the Guardian Council reviews the candidates' capabilities, backgrounds, and CVs and everything, and they decide which of the which of the people who have registered can actually run for the presidency. And we have seen people like Ali Larijani, who was the head of the parliament for many years. He's been in the establishment for many years. He was disqualified. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who was the president for 8 years, he was disqualified. So there were a number of people who were really very like kind of popular and had some sort of support, and they were disqualified from running from presidency for various reasons. But as the Guardian Council did not really convince the people why these people have been disqualified, people feel like some sort of dissatisfaction with that process.
And so is there like a specific metric that is used to identify which candidates are suitable to make it to the final round, or is it kind of arbitrary?
I guess there is, but it's not something very transparent, and that's one of the problems, because it's like you will see, for example, letters coming out in a few months that list the reasons why a certain person was disqualified, but these are like our guesses. You don't know how reliable those sources are. So there's kind of lack of transparency that makes it difficult to believe what exactly the reason was. And sometimes because it's personal, it's like a private reason, they cannot share it with the public. In the case of Ali Larijani, there was this going, for example, viral online, that he has his children live abroad, like in the US, and that's one reason that he has been disqualified, because of security concerns. How reliable that information is, or if that's exactly what has happened, it's difficult to know.
Absolutely. And you mentioned transparency. I think that's one thing that we should also touch on. One thing that historically, or at least in the past several years, Iranians have complained of with their government is this lack of transparency, especially when it comes to their economic grievances. Do you think, from what you're seeing from the candidates that are kind of running right now, do you think that maybe transparency is something that might be improved? Maybe Iranians can expect higher levels of government accountability and transparency. Is that something that you foresee happening?
Whether or not we're going to see a more transparency really depends on who's going to win the elections. For example, right now we have the head of the parliament running as a candidate, and the same parliament voted against MPs vote transparency. So there was this bill introduced at the parliament that people should know what their candidates have, like which laws or legislations the candidates have voted for, and the parliament members voted against that transparency. So this is like something that people are not happy with. Like they want to know that the people that they have voted for, like what do they think of a certain legislation or resolution. So they want to know, and they voted against that transparency. But it really depends on how. I think that's one thing that will not directly but indirectly come up in the presidential debates, and people will decide on that.
In terms of kind of standing for Iranians and what they want, Iran has kind of been one of the very few Muslim nations that has really stood with Palestine in word and in action, and we have seen it significantly in the past several months. One thing that often comes up in questions among the Muslim Ummah and the dialogue about Palestine is Iran is often excluded from that conversation, even though a lot of the kind of, I would say, Arab nations are speaking a lot about Palestine, but in action, whether it's economic policies or just separating their foreign policies from the Israeli regime, have kind of fallen short in that sense. Why would you say that Iran is often ignored or brushed off in this larger conversation?
I mean, as always, I think the main reason is the propaganda, the anti-Iran propaganda that is produced by the West, but is consumed in the region. But it's also, there are a few factors that make it difficult for people who do not really have direct interaction with Iran or have not experienced, for example, traveling to Iran or knowing people and Iranians or the political system, that make it difficult for them to understand where Iran stands when it comes to Palestine or how it is the issues related to Iran. One thing is Arab nationalism, because Iranians are not Arabs; they're like naturally excluded from the rest of the Muslim Ummah. The other one is that the majority of Iranians are Shia, while the majority of the Muslim Ummah are Sunni. For example, the states, the Persian Gulf states, all of them, or at least the majority of them, are like U.S. allies, and they want to have good relations with the U.S. and they have actually ignored public opinion because, like, when you look at Jordan, when you look at Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the people really support Palestine, and they have it's a part of their identity to support Palestine and the liberation of Palestine, and they strongly disagree with what their governments say. But because it is the governments who run the media and who put forward what that nation thinks or how they behave towards a certain nation, what we perceive is that they want to exclude Iran and they don't really understand the support that Iran has been offering to Palestine, and they usually don't understand that it's a very, very important part of our constitution to support the oppressed people. And it's one of the main ideals of the Islamic Revolution, even before the revolution of of Imam Khomeini or other important figures within the Islamic Revolution. You see that Palestine is a central issue. And even before the Islamic Revolution, the Iranian nation always supported Palestine. So that's why you see, for example, the monarch, the Shah of Iran, also tries to occasionally speak about how Iranians care for Palestine and Palestine is an important issue because he knew that that's what the public opinion demanded.
Right. And one last question to kind of tie this to Iranian public opinion, since we've kind of been visiting that theme. One thing that you a lot of times hear some Iranians say is, why is our country supporting financially, whatever, the people of Palestine when our own people are going hungry and we have so many, economic struggles? Why is it that we care so much about Palestine? Now, obviously, I would say this is far from being the majority of the people. But again, these are kind of the sentiments that at least Western media tries to overemphasize when it's covering Iran and its public opinion. How would you kind of respond to that?
Well, as you said, part of it is because of the misrepresentation of the Iranian public opinion. Because, usually for example, the working class, the religious people are not represented as Iranians in the Western media. When the West wants to talk about Iran and Iranians, we usually have the secular, well-off Iranians who live in northern Tehran rather than in other places. There is a portion of the Iranian population that unfortunately falls for the propaganda, and these questions are put forward by Farsi-speaking propaganda channels, and they just repeat that. It's not like a genuine question. But yes, that's a debate that we have, and like you would see happening in even family gatherings. But my response, and even some of my friends or a lot of my friends who do not necessarily support the government, for example, they wouldn't want to take part in the election, they still support Palestine. They understand because they cannot forget how, for example, the Mossad trained the intelligence service of Shah to carry out
Exactly.
all sorts of torture methods on Iranian dissidents, or
Mm-hmm.
how the Israeli regime has assassinated our nuclear scientists, has attacked our military facilities. So, and I saw a lot of people who did not, who like strongly opposed the government, were very happy when the Operation True Promise happened. They were like feeling very proud of that. And that's
Right.
actually one thing that I think will bring more people to the, to the
To the
voting
polls.
ballots because they want to vote now that they see their government is standing very strong.
Right.
I mean, apart from the ideological factors that play a role in supporting Palestine, in terms of security and foreign policy, we always see the Israeli regime as the rabid dog that has to be, kept
Tamed.
far away from Iran. So if you do not deter the threat of Israeli regime inside the occupied lands, Israel is not going to stay happy with what it has. It's going to spread towards, and right now that's what's happening actually. But the threat of the Israeli regime would spread throughout the region, and it would reach to Iran, and we would be even targeted and threatened more strongly if we did not have a policy uh, that included or that highlighted the like fighting is the Israeli regime. And the other thing is that if you do not oppose occupation of a land, no matter who is occupying that land, I mean, in this case, it's the Israeli regime and it's the Palestinian nation who are our Muslim brothers. I mean, also the Christian and Jewish Palestinians, they're our brothers in humanity. And apart from that, if you do not oppose a genocide, if you do not oppose occupation, illegal occupation of a land, it could happen to you anytime, and then it's too late to
Absolutely.
start opposing it. So it's
Exactly.
common sense. It's basic common sense that encourages Iran and Iranians to support Palestine, the Palestinian liberation.
100%. Well, thank you so much, Setareh, for your time. I really appreciate your insights. Very eye-opening. And we are all praying that, inshallah, the upcoming election in Iran results in a president that is the best for the future and for the people of Iran.
Inshallah. Thanks for having me.